In the ruins of history, money writes its own gospel. A journalist opens a door that was never meant to be unlocked. What she finds could burn the world again. This is the ashes of Wall Street. There are explosions in history that don't just destroy buildings, they erase memory. On September 16th, 1,920 inches, the heart of Manhattan's financial district, a horse-drawn wagon stopped in front of the J.P. Morgan headquarters. Seconds later, it vanished in fire. The blast ripped through Wall Street, killing 38 people, injuring hundreds more. They called it terrorism, but those inside the system knew better. It was a contract, a cleansing. I wasn't alive then, but my life and yours still burns in the shadow of that day. Because when the ashes fell, it wasn't just metal and blood that melted. It was belief. They say America was built on faith. Faith in money, in markets, in endless growth. But I've seen the other side, where money doesn't reflect light, it devours it. A century has passed, and still no one knows who truly orchestrated the blast. No one was convicted. No file survived intact, and everyone who ever came close to the truth disappeared. I'm not a historian. I'm just a shadow. Someone who opened a door that was never meant to be found. What I discovered wasn't just an answer. It was proof that every system carries the code of its own ashes. Chapter 1. The Spark Beneath the Dust. The city shimmered in the heat of late May 2025. Wall Street, once the emblem of untouchable power, now pulsed beneath a canopy of glass towers that looked more like weapons than architecture. Neon screens bled data into the night air, whispering the world's heartbeat. Oil prices, war updates, digital currency spikes. Beneath it all, the ghosts of the old financial district waited, breathing through the cracks of history. Elena Marquez didn't believe in ghosts, at least not until she found one in her inbox. She sat alone in the newsroom of the Financial Tribune, the kind of place where caffeine was currency and deadlines bled into dawn. The rest of the office had gone home hours ago. Only the hum of the servers and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights remained. Her eyes burned from the glow of the monitor. The email subject line was simple. From unknown sender. Subject, for your eyes only. 1,920. Attached was a single encrypted file, no text, no signature. At first, she thought it was spam, another corporate whistleblower trying to sell a scoop. But when she decrypted it with a journalist's toolkit she'd built herself, the screen flickered. Lines of code rearranging into an image. A yellow document, stamped with the seal of the United States Treasury. 1,920. Beneath the seal, a handwritten note glowed faintly as if burned into the digital image. Do not open the door that cannot be closed. Elena frowned. Well, that's melodramatic, she muttered, sipping her cold coffee. But her pulse quickened. Inside the file was a report dated the 16th of September, 1920. The day a horse-drawn wagon exploded on Wall Street, killing 38 people and injuring hundreds. The official story claimed anarchists had struck at the heart of American capitalism. Yet, as she scrolled, she saw something strange. Pages redacted with modern digital tags, not historical ink blocks. Someone had updated this document recently. She leaned closer. Who the hell touched this? And why? A line of text caught her eye. Beneath a blacked-out paragraph, metadata flickered, buried but not erased. Transfer ledger, the 15th of September 1920. Voss and Co., Rothmere Bank, Zurich. And below it, code reference, Ashes, Series 01. Elena's throat tightened. Rothmere Bank was one of Europe's oldest institutions, recently merged with Voss Bank, a name whispered in scandals that never made the headlines. Why would a century-old bombing connect to a Swiss banking firm that still controlled half of Europe's capital flows? She printed the document, glancing around the empty office. Her boss would kill her for chasing ghosts again, especially after her last piece, an expose on offshore laundering in Luxembourg, had nearly cost the paper its corporate funding. But something in her gut told her this was bigger, older, darker. As the printer hummed, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. You opened the file. That was a mistake. Her heart dropped. She scanned the room, half expecting someone to be watching from the hallway. The newsroom was silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant horns of the city below. She typed back before her courage evaporated. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Then, you've opened a door that can't be closed. Get out of the building. Now. The lights flickered. A sound, soft, mechanical, came from the server room behind her. Something was uploading. She rushed to the back, pushing through glass doors. Rows of blinking routers lined the walls like a technological cathedral. On the central monitor, her file was replicating itself, streaming out to anonymous addresses. Shit. She yanked the plug, killing the feed, but the damage was done. The file was gone, scattered across the digital ether. Then footsteps, 2 of them. Heavy, purposeful, not security. Elena grabbed her bag, shoving the printed pages inside, and ducked behind a column. A pair of men in dark suits entered, eyes scanning the room with military precision. One of them spoke into a comm. Target confirmed. Room still warm. She's close. Her breath froze. They're here for me. She moved quietly, edging toward the side exit that led to the parking level. Every sound felt amplified: the scrape of her shoes, the buzz of the emergency light. She swiped her card, but the door didn't open. System locked. The men were closer now. Check the west corridor. She spotted an emergency stairwell sign and slipped through. The metal door closed with a soft click. She descended the stairwell 2 floors before stopping to catch her breath, heart hammering against her ribs. Her phone buzzed again. Same number. Go to 45 Broad Street, basement level. Tell them you're here for the dust. The message vanished after 5 seconds. Self-destructing text. Whoever sent it wasn't just warning her, they were tracking her. Outside, rain had begun to fall, thin and silver under the streetlights. She pulled her coat tighter and walked fast, weaving through the empty night. Drones hovered overhead, their red eyes blinking like watchful stars. The skyscrapers loomed around her like tombstones of money. When she reached 45 Broad, it looked abandoned, an old bank building from the early 1900s. Boarded windows, marble columns scarred with graffiti, the kind of place the city forgot to demolish. She hesitated before pushing open the door. Inside was darkness. Dust motes danced in the air, glowing faintly in the beam of her phone's flashlight. The floor creaked under her shoes. Somewhere in the back, machinery hummed alive. Elena Marquez, a voice called. She froze. A figure emerged from the shadows, wearing a gray hoodie, face lit by the pale light of multiple monitors. I was expecting you, the stranger said. Who are you? Someone who doesn't exist anymore. He motioned toward the screens. "You found something they've buried for 100 years. The Wall Street bombing," he nodded. "It wasn't terrorism. It was an audit. Someone tried to erase a debt that shouldn't have existed." On the monitors, images flashed. The ruins of Wall Street, black and white photos of dead horses, broken glass, burning paper raining from the sky. Then, overlaid on top, modern digital transaction maps, encrypted data chains. Elena's eyes widened. This is money movement? Not just money, time. The same accounts from 1920 are active again under new names. Someone's been recycling wealth across generations, hidden inside market collapses and recoveries. He handed her a small drive. "This is Series 02 of the Ashes files. Keep it offline." "Who are they?" she asked. The hacker hesitated. "They call themselves the Ashes Consortium. Every crash, every bailout, every global crisis, they orchestrate it. 1920 was their rehearsal." The building suddenly went dark, a hum of static, then the sharp echo of a silenced gunshot. The hacker staggered, blood blooming on his hoodie. "Run!" he gasped, pushing the drive into her hand. Elena bolted, heart pounding, as footsteps thundered behind her. Bullets shattered marble. She dove through the side door, sprinting into the rain-soaked alley. Behind her, the building erupted in flame. Sirens screamed through the night as she stumbled onto Wall Street, clutching the drive like a lifeline. The air smelled of smoke and dust, eerily like the old photographs she'd seen moments earlier, a century's echo. The past had caught up with her. As firefighters rushed past, a gust of wind lifted a charred scrap of paper to her feet. She picked it up. It was part of the original 1920 Treasury seal, burned and cracked, and beneath it, faint handwriting, half erased by ash. "The spark has returned. The dust remembers. Do not open the door that cannot be closed." Elena looked up at the smoldering ruins. Somewhere in the city's electric veins, the truth had awakened, and it had her name. Chapter 2. Ghosts of Wall Street. Dawn arrived like smoke, thick, gray, and uncertain. New York's skyline glimmered faintly beneath a bruised sky, the kind of morning that made everything feel like an aftermath. Elena Marquez sat in a 24-hour diner on Fulton Street, still trembling, her coat soaked through from the night's rain. A mug of untouched coffee sat before her, steam curling upward like a whisper from another life. The TV above the counter buzzed with static before flashing breaking news. "Fire destroys abandoned bank on Broad Street. No casualties reported." She flinched. The words, "no casualties," hit harder than she expected. Whoever the man in the hoodie was, he had no name now, no story, no trace. Just a ghost swallowed by the flames. Elena pulled the small drive from her pocket, still warm to the touch. She turned it over in her hand, the metallic casing etched with two faint letters. AC. Ashes Consortium. The phrase echoed like a curse. She connected the drive to her encrypted laptop. The screen blinked once, twice, then a single folder appeared. Inside, financial ledgers, dating back decades, written in a mixture of code and old banking shorthand. Transactions looping through shell companies, front charities, collapsed funds. The money didn't vanish, it reincarnated. Every 70 to 80 years, the same pattern repeated. Economic collapse, bailout, sudden surge in emergency acquisitions. The profit margins aligned like fingerprints across generations. She whispered, "They've been doing this for over a century." A voice from behind her interrupted, "Not they. It." Elena turned. A man in his mid-30s stood by the doorway. Dark jacket, rain dripping from his hood. Sharp eyes, too calm for a stranger. "Do I know you? You were supposed to meet me last night. My partner didn't make it." Her pulse skipped. "You're Cypher." He sat across from her, sliding a small signal jammer onto the table. The air around them grew strangely quiet digital silence. The Ashes Consortium isn't an organization. It's a protocol. She frowned. A protocol. An algorithmic system designed before the Second World War. Hidden inside global banking codes. It moves capital invisibly, launders through generations, erases debt through engineered collapse. Elena stared at him. "So, all the crashes, all the unforeseen recessions," he nodded. "Orchestrated. Wall Street, 1920. The Great Depression, 2008. Every one of them was a reset. The world burns. Their balance sheet clears." He slid a tablet toward her encrypted documents, scrolling across the screen. "This is Series 03. Your drive was Series 02. Each set exposes another century of transactions." "Why send them to me?" she asked. Cypher leaned back, watching her through the steam of her coffee. "Because they've started deleting people who remember. Journalists, economists, even archivists. You've been writing about financial ghosts for years. You already speak their language." Elena felt the weight of every word. "And what happens if I publish this?" "You won't." He said it calmly, not as a threat, as a fact. "They own the networks, the outlets, the ad servers. You post it, it disappears in 10 minutes. You tweet it, your account's gone. They built the internet's plumbing." Outside, the street reflected in the diner window glass towers like knives cutting through fog. A delivery drone hovered past, its red light pulsing like a heartbeat. Elena clenched her jaw. "Then what do we do?" Cypher's eyes met hers. "We trace the seed. Every system has an origin, and theirs begins in one place, the 1920 ledger room. The one that burned. The bank that exploded?" He nodded. "There's still a sub-basement that survived, access sealed under federal archive law. But someone's been there recently, new data packets, new power usage." "Someone reopened it," Cypher smirked. "Or something." The waitress came by with a refill, and both fell silent. When she left, Cypher spoke again. "Lower now. They'll come for you again." The moment that drive connected online, your name went into their anomaly log. That's how they cleaned the system. "So how do we stay invisible?" "By dying," he said simply. "Digitally." He pulled a small device from his jacket, a black cube with a single switch. One push, and your online identity vanishes. Bank accounts, records, socials all wiped. You'll stop existing in their database. Elena stared at it. "And you?" "I already pushed mine." For a moment, she saw it, the exhaustion in his eyes, the loneliness of someone who'd erased himself to keep breathing. She took a breath. "If I do this, there's no going back." Cypher smiled faintly. "Doors don't reopen once they're burned." She pressed the switch. Her laptop screen flickered. Phone went dead. Bank app error. Email inaccessible. In less than 60 seconds, Elena Marquez journalist ceased to exist. Silence filled her chest, not fear, but clarity. For the first time, she was off the grid. Cypher rose, throwing a few bills on the counter. Come on, if we're right, the ashes seed is buried under the old federal vault. She followed him out into the gray morning. The streets were empty now, the air thick with the scent of last night's rain and distant smoke. As they walked, the city's rhythm changed, traffic lights blinking out of sync, LED billboards freezing mid-ad. Somewhere, deep in the network, the system was aware. It had noticed them. Cypher's voice was almost a whisper. Every ghost leaves a trail, Elena, and we're about to follow the oldest one. Behind them, a black car idled at the curb. Tinted windows, no license plate. A figure inside lowered a phone. Targets located. Protocol reinstate, ashes. 3. And from somewhere beneath the earth, deep under Wall Street's marble veins, an old server flickered awake for the first time in decades. Chapter 3. The Ledger of Blood. Rain returned to Manhattan with a kind of vengeance, slicing through the air in thin silver lines. The sky was the color of graphite, the kind that promised more than just a storm. Elena and Cypher moved through the underbelly of the city, the tunnels beneath Grand Central Station. The hum of the world above was a muted roar, trains thundering like ghosts over their heads. Cypher's voice was terse, focused. According to the data, there's a relay terminal under track 23. A private link, only live twice a year. Elena followed, boots slipping on wet steel. The tunnel smelt of oil and time, like the breath of an old machine refusing to die. She tightened her grip on the drive in her pocket. What happens if they know we're here? Cypher smiled without humor. They always know. They found the relay room sealed behind a rusted gate. Cypher knelt, worked the old lock open with a magnet tool. Inside, the walls were lined with forgotten tech analog terminals, wired into newer routers, humming softly. Elena's breath caught when she saw the emblem carved into the panel. AC, the same as the drive. Cypher connected a cable. Screens came alive, flickering through decades of data. For a moment, the room pulsed with life, a mosaic of ledgers, signatures, death certificates. Elena leaned closer. Wait, she murmured. These are transfer orders, all dated September 1920, the day of the bombing. But before Cypher could reply, the lights cut out. Total darkness swallowed them. Then a click, not electronic, mechanical. A laser sight cut through the black, settling on Cypher's chest. Move, someone hissed from the shadows. Gunfire tore through the room, deafening. Elena ducked behind a terminal as sparks flew, the smell of ozone and burning metal filling the air. Cypher fired back, shouting, "They found us!" She crawled to the side, adrenaline screaming through her veins. One of the attackers lunged toward her, a blur of motion and shadow. She swung the laptop hard against his arm, the crack of bone sharp and wet. The gun clattered away. Cypher yelled again, then a sharp, final sound cut him off. When Elena turned, he was on the floor, still, blood pooling beneath the flickering glow of an old monitor. Her body froze. Then, instinct took over. She grabbed the drive, bolted through the corridor as bullets tore through the walls. Somewhere above, the sound of trains grew louder, merging with the panic pounding in her chest. She reached the maintenance ladder, climbed. Her hands slipped, nails scraping metal, lungs on fire. The hatch burst open into Grand Central's underpass. People everywhere. Crowds. Noise. Light. Elena ran. Behind her, shadows followed men in dark suits, eyes scanning, coordinated. She pushed through a sea of commuters, heart in her throat. The echo of footsteps grew closer, louder. Then someone grabbed her wrist. Before she could scream, a low voice whispered against her ear, steady and firm. "Don't fight. This way." The man pulled her through a side door, down another passage, into a service corridor lined with pipes. He moved like someone trained to move, efficient, invisible. "Who are you?" she demanded, breath ragged. "Someone who's been watching the same ghosts you have." On bend. They turned into a narrow maintenance bay. He shut the door behind them, locked it. The air smelt of iron and old oil. He turned to face her, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of calm that came from years of being hunted and surviving anyway. "Michael Rourke," he said, "former intelligence liaison, Bank of England detail, until I got too curious." Elena's pulse slowed, just enough for her to see his face, rough lines, faded scars, eyes that had seen too much. "You knew, Cypher. Everyone who gets this close knows everyone else until one of them dies." He looked at her drive. "That's what they were after?" "Yes. It's the second ledger. Cypher called it Series 02. Rourke took a slow breath. "Then we're already late." He crouched, pulling a folded envelope from his jacket. Inside was a printed satellite image, Zurich, dated last week. "Whatever's left of the consortium, it's moved. European accounts, untraceable transfers. But the command node still sits here." He pointed at the map, New York. "Everything loops back to the first ledger, the one buried under your feet." Elena stared at him, trying to read the truth in his voice. "How long have you been following this?" "Since before you were writing exposés on cryptocurrency fraud." "And why? Help me." Rourke hesitated. Then, quietly, "Because I used to protect them." The words hit her like a blade. "You worked for the consortium?" "I worked for people who made sure the consortium stayed invisible." His gaze hardened. "Until I realized what they were feeding." Outside, through the thin door, the sound of sirens swelled. Police, or something worse. Rourke stepped closer. "You're not safe here. They'll flood this place in minutes. We move now, or you end up a footnote." Elena grabbed her bag. "Where?" "To someone who still remembers what's real." "Zurich." She hesitated, looking down at Cypher's blood on her sleeve. "He died for this." Rourke's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then make it mean something." They slipped through a maintenance exit, blending into the swarm of people pouring through the main terminal. At the far end, one of the black-suited men spotted them. "Target sighted." Rourke shoved Elena ahead. "Keep moving." The station erupted in chaos, commuters scattering, alarms blaring. Rourke turned, drew a small pistol from his coat, fired twice. The shots echoed, sharp as thunder. They reached the escalators, sprinted upward into the street. Rain slammed against them like shrapnel. Elena's breath came in gasps. The drive clutched like a heartbeat in her hand. At the corner of Vanderbilt Avenue, a black SUV screeched toward them. Rourke grabbed her arm, dragged her into an alley. Gunfire erupted again, glass shattering, metal screaming. They ducked behind a delivery truck. Rourke reloaded calmly, eyes fixed on the SUV. Professional extraction team, not NYPD. They want the drive intact. He looked at her, rain dripping from his brow. "You ever fired a gun?" She shook her head. "Good. Don't start now." He waited for a break, then fired once. The SUV's front tire exploded. Smoke and shouting filled the street. "Move!" he barked. They ran again down side streets, through puddles that looked like oil slicks. Finally, they slipped into an underground car park. Rourke opened a maintenance door with a card that shouldn't exist. Inside a small, unmarked sedan, he started the engine. Seatbelt. Elena stared at him. "You're very prepared." He gave a half smile. Occupational hazard. As they sped through the tunnels, New York blurred into neon streaks, city of ghosts and currency, history and violence. Only when they reached the Manhattan Bridge did Elena speak again. "Why did Cypher say the consortium isn't an organization?" Rourke's hands tightened on the wheel. "Because it's not. It's a bloodline built on debt, sustained by it. Families that profit every time the world collapses." She turned toward him. "And what are they planning now?" He looked out over the river, the lights of Wall Street reflecting in the dark water below. "Something you won't find in any headline." Elena frowned. "Then tell me." Rourke's jaw clenched. "You've touched something deadlier than any bomb money." Chapter 4. Zurich Protocol. Zurich was too clean for truth. The rain here didn't fall, it descended, precise and calculated, like it had been instructed where to land. Even the fog looked deliberate. Elena stared out the train window as the landscape shifted from New York's ruinous energy to Switzerland's sterile calm. The skyline of glass and silence reflected her own exhaustion. Next to her, Rourke dozed lightly, arms crossed, every muscle alert even in rest. On the small table between them lay the drive, wrapped now in a strip of electrical tape. Its faint hum had stopped, but Elena could feel it pulsing in her mind. She whispered, almost to herself, "They killed him for this." With Naden, Rourke's eyes opened. Cypher knew the rules. The moment you see the architecture, you become part of it. She looked at him. Architecture of what? Control. The train slowed as they entered Zurich Hauptbahnhof. From the window, the city rose, clean lines, neutral tones, the illusion of neutrality that Europe loved to sell. But underneath, money flowed like blood through veins no one wanted to see. Rourke handed her a hooded coat. "Dr. Kovacs doesn't meet anyone twice. When we walk in, speak little, listen more." The car that picked them up was unmarked, of course. Its driver didn't speak. They climbed through winding streets until they reached an unassuming concrete building by the lake. No sign, no number, just a black door that hissed open at their approach. Inside, light fractured across metal walls. The air smelled faintly of ozone and old paper. A voice spoke from the shadows, smooth and low. "You're late, Mr. Rourke." Dr. Emil Kovacs emerged from behind a screen of servers, a man in his 60s with surgeon's hands and the posture of someone who'd stopped believing in coincidences. His eyes, a pale blue, missed nothing. Rourke greeted him curtly. "She's the one who found the Series 02 ledger." Kovacs studied Elena for a long moment. "You're younger than I expected. Youth makes mistakes. Curiosity is the most fatal of them." "I didn't come for philosophy," Elena said. "I came for answers." Kovacs's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then follow me." He led them through a narrow corridor into a chamber filled with monitors and old projection reels. The entire far wall was a digital map, the world rendered in arteries of gold and red, pulsing gently like a living organism. "This," he said, "is what they call the Zurich Protocol." Elena stepped closer. "What am I looking at?" "Capital movement. Every major transfer of wealth since 1920, recorded, coded, and hidden. I've reconstructed it from fragments buried across 40 nations. The public sees recessions, recoveries, global shifts. But look closer." He touched a control pad, and the map zoomed into layers: time, value, origin. Elena gasped. "The lines aren't moving forward." "Exactly," Kovacs said. "For every legitimate transfer forward in time, there's a shadow transaction flowing backward. It shouldn't be possible. Money can't move against chronology. Yet here it is." Rourke frowned. "Back to where?" Kovacs tapped a node, glowing faintly over Manhattan, to the year 1920, to the day of the bombing. Elena's heart lurched. "You mean the money?" "Never left," Kovacs finished. "The explosion erased evidence of the first reversal. Since then, the consortium has been feeding wealth backward, laundering not through space but through history itself." He turned to them, voice sharper now. "Every crash, every sudden bailout, it's the system correcting itself, rebalancing across time to maintain the illusion of progress. You think we're moving forward, but the real economy's been running in reverse for a century." Rourke's face hardened. "You're saying we're living off ghost capital?" "Precisely. The blood of dead empires, still circulating." Elena looked back at the glowing arteries, mesmerized. "But how? This isn't just accounting." "It isn't. The original ledger, the first Ashes file, wasn't a book. It was an algorithm, a prototype for recursive trade. Its designer built it on temporal compression values, shifting instantaneously between centuries, using mirrored debt instruments. In theory, it was meant to stabilize economies. In practice, it became a time weapon," Rourke said quietly. Kovacs nodded once. "Yes, and now someone has reactivated it." The air in the room seemed to tighten. Elena whispered, "You mean the consortium's still alive?" Kovacs looked at her, not pitying, not kind, simply factual. "They never died. They just changed their names. Vosbank, Helvetia Group, even your own employer, Miss Marquez. They all trace back to the same parent entity." Her throat went dry. "The New York Financial Review." Kovacs smiled faintly. "Did you think they let you publish all those exposés out of courage? They wanted you to chase their ghost stories. Distraction is part of containment." Rourke slammed his hand on the table. "If this protocol exists, it can be traced. Everything digital leaves an echo." Kovacs' expression didn't change. "You think I haven't tried? The echo ends here." He gestured to a single glowing node on the map, a red dot pulsing faintly in the Alps. "There's a server hidden beneath Mount Pilatus, encrypted beneath centuries of Vatican leases and Swiss neutrality. That's where the recursion begins." Elena's eyes narrowed. "You want us to go there?" "I want nothing. But if you're foolish enough to follow this, that's where the next truth waits." Rourke folded the map printout, sliding it into his coat. "You said you reconstructed this from fragments. How did you get them?" For the first time, Kovacs looked uneasy. "Not alone. There was a woman in Rome, Sister Allegra. She managed archives at the Vatican Bank. She smuggled records before she disappeared." Elena caught the pause. "Disappeared 2 years ago. Official cause: heart failure. Unofficially, she was the last custodian of the Ambrosiano files. Rourke's tone sharpened. The same files from the 1982 scandal. Kovacs nodded. Yes, the church was never laundering for criminals. The criminals were laundering for the protocol. Outside, thunder rolled over the lake. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Elena felt a chill crawl through her skin. Rourke checked his watch. We need to move. The longer we stay, the higher the signal risk. But Kovacs didn't move. He stared at his monitor, his hand trembling slightly. Too late. What? Elena asked. On the screen, the golden arteries were dimming, one by one, as if someone were draining light from the world. Rourke's instincts snapped. They've breached your system, Kovacs whispered. They found me. The servers began to smoke, circuits popping. Emergency lights flashed crimson. Rourke grabbed Elena's arm. Move! They sprinted down the corridor as the entire facility went into lockdown. Behind them, fire suppression gas hissed from vents. Elena glanced back, once saw Kovacs standing before his burning map, face illuminated in red. He looked strangely at peace. Every empire, he murmured, leaves a shadow. Then the door sealed. Rourke dragged her into the car outside. The driver was gone. He slid behind the wheel. They'll have the perimeter in minutes. Hold on. The tires screamed against wet asphalt. Behind them, the hillside lab erupted a silent white explosion, swallowed by rain. Elena's chest ached. He's gone. Rourke didn't look back. He knew he would be. That's why he gave us the coordinates. She turned to him, eyes wide. Mount Pilatus. He nodded grimly. If the Vatican's involved, we're going to need more than luck. The city lights fell away behind them as they drove toward the dark outline of the Alps. The storm breaking open above, and somewhere far beneath the mountain unseen, unheard the red node on Kovacs's dying map pulsed once more, as if something deep in the world had just awakened. Chapter 5. The Banker's Funeral. The bells of Zurich tolled as the fog rolled down from the lake, swallowing the skyline like an old ghost returning to claim its home. In the gray hush of dawn, Elena Marquez stood outside the iron gates of the street. Peterhof Cemetery, her coat collar pulled high against the drizzle. The funeral procession moved slowly, a small group of dark umbrellas among white marble stones. The man they were burying that morning was Lucas Reinhardt, one of Switzerland's most discreet private bankers, found dead in his study 3 nights prior. The official story called it suicide. The unofficial whispers called it atonement. Elena wasn't invited, but she didn't need to be. She was there for something far older than mourning. The letter. She watched as the priest muttered the final prayer, Latin syllables dissolving into mist. Reinhardt's coffin was lowered into the earth, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. When the crowd began to disperse, a woman in a black veil lingered by the grave, his widow, perhaps. The woman slipped a folded letter between the roses on the coffin, then turned away quickly, as if afraid to be seen. When she was gone, Elena approached, her breath fogged in the cold. The roses smelled faintly metallic, as if soaked in rain and iron. She bent down and, pretending to adjust her gloves, plucked the letter free. The handwriting was precise, almost mechanical. Inside, a single line. The watch stops when the world begins again. Below it, a faint smudge of rust or dried blood. Elena frowned. Her pulse quickened. It wasn't just poetry. It was a code. The banker's house. Later that afternoon, she entered Reinhardt's house under a false pretext, a forensic audit request, authorized by the Zurich prosecutor's office. Rourke, limping from the Paris incident, waited outside in the rented black Audi, scanning for tails. The house was immaculate. White walls, walnut floors, the faint scent of cedar and whiskey. But the study where he'd supposedly hanged himself felt wrong. The police had cleared the scene, yet there was something deliberate about the mess. A single chair overturned, a rope burn on the beam, and most curious of all, a dusty pocket watch on the desk. Its glass cracked, stopped at 9:20. Elena slipped on latex gloves. The watch was American, early 20th century, engraved with the initials WBC, Wall Street Bank Consortium. Inside the lid, beneath the dust, was a Latin inscription, Incineribus Veritas. In ashes, the truth. She exhaled sharply. The same phrase that appeared in the files stolen from her New York apartment weeks ago. The code beneath time. She opened her laptop, connected the small field scanner, and began to examine the watch under infrared. Their faint etchings beneath the metal layer. Numbers. A repeating sequence. 1,920. 1,954. 1,982. 2008. 2025. A timeline. 5 financial collapses. 5 resets. Rourke's voice crackled through the earpiece. You've got company. 2 black sedans. No plates. Don't take long. Elena ignored him for a moment. She pressed the crown of the watch and a false compartment sprang open, revealing a curled fragment of parchment. Old, yellowed, but still legible. It was a ledger entry written in fountain pen. A transfer of gold reserves from WBC to an anonymous account marked Vaticanum 9. She whispered under her breath, "The Vatican account. It's real." Then she noticed the ink. It wasn't faded by age. It was recent. Someone had rewritten the past. The visitor. The front door creaked. Footsteps slow, deliberate. Elena closed the watch, slipped it into her pocket, and killed the lights. The study dimmed to the gray of late afternoon. She crouched behind the desk. A silhouette entered mail, broad-shouldered, moving with military precision. He stopped by the window, looked out briefly, then walked straight to the desk. He picked up Reinhardt's suicide note, a fake one, planted by police, and tore it in half. Then, quietly, he spoke in English with a German accent. "She's already here." Elena froze. He pulled out his phone. "Ja, the watch is gone. Proceed to phase 2. Before she could move, Rourke's voice thundered in her earpiece. "Elena, out, now." Glass shattered. A sniper's bullet punched through the window, missing her by inches. She rolled to the side, dove for the hallway, and ran. The chase. Outside, the rain had thickened into sleet. Rourke gunned the engine as she leapt into the Audi. Bullets pinged off the rear glass. The car fishtailed on the cobblestone street. Who the hell were they? She gasped. Private contractors. Swiss intel doesn't move like that. They're cleaning up. Cleaning what? History, Rourke said grimly. And we're standing in the middle of it. They raced through the narrow streets, the spires of Zurich flashing past in ghostly streaks. The sedans followed, headlights slicing through fog. Rourke took a hard left into an underground car park beneath the Limit River Bridge. They killed the engine, Silence, except for the drip of rain from concrete beams. Elena pulled the watch from her coat. Its cracked glass gleamed faintly under the emergency light. He knew he was going to die, she whispered. This was his confession. Rourke frowned. Or his insurance. The confession. That night, they holed up in a safe flat on the outskirts of Zug. Quiet, sterile, with blackout curtains and the faint hum of distant trains. Elena spent hours decoding the numbers etched inside the pocket watch. They weren't just years, they were coordinates for financial transfers, each pointing to hidden trust accounts buried under layers of shell companies. All roads led to one name, Voss International Holdings. Rourke leaned back, cigarette burning low. Voss again. The family that built the first gold vault under Wall Street. Elena nodded slowly. And the same family funding the Vatican's digital currency project. Reinhardt was their intermediary until he tried to expose them. She played the final recording recovered from his phone. His voice trembled near tears. If anyone finds this, the watch carries the truth. The gold we kept moving never stopped. It became data, algorithms, influence. Wall Street never rebuilt, it evolved. We turned faith into currency. Static, then silence. The realization. Elena sat back, staring at the faint glow of the monitor. For the first time, the pattern made sense. The Ashes network wasn't just about hidden money. It was about control, financial, political, spiritual. Every collapse, every crisis, every reset had been engineered. Rourke looked at her through the smoke. You really think they'd let this go public? They already killed a man to stop it. Then we'll need to disappear before they decide we're next. Elena closed the watch carefully and slipped it into a lead-lined box. No, we go deeper. Reinhardt left the next clue in the engraving. In Cineribus Veritas, the truth is buried in the ashes. Rourke raised an eyebrow. Ashes of what? Wall Street, she whispered. The ruins of the original vaults. That's where it began, and that's where it ends. Outside, thunder rolled across the Alps. The storm was coming. The last frame. Hours later, in the dead of night, Rourke stood at the window, watching the lights of Zurich flicker through rain. He touched the side of his neck, the old scar from a mission gone wrong. You know, he said quietly, every time I think I've seen the end of it, there's another layer beneath. Maybe that's what they count on, that we'll stop digging. Elena didn't look up from her screen. Then we dig until we hit the foundation. She paused the scan. The watch's inner spring had a final micro-etching, a faint spiral of numbers forming a circle. At the center, she drew in a sharp breath. Vault 9. Rourke turned. What is it? It's not a number. It's a location. The lights flickered. A shadow moved outside the window. Before Rourke could react, a silenced round cracked the glass. The bullet buried itself in the wall beside her head. He grabbed her, pulled her down. They found us. As they crawled toward the back exit, Elena clutched the pocket watch to her chest. Through the shattered window, a figure in a black coat disappeared into the fog, leaving behind the faint reflection of red taillights fading like embers in the rain. Chapter 6. The Ashes Network. Rain lashed across the glass as the train carved its way north through the Alps, a silver blur in the black of night. Elena Marquez sat opposite Rourke in the dimly lit compartment, the pocket watch resting on the table between them, ticking faintly again, though it had stopped for more than a century. She couldn't stop thinking about the engraving. IX. Vault 9. We can't do this alone. she said finally. We never could, Rourke replied. But whoever helps us, they'll paint a target on their back. Then they should know what they're getting into. He gave a small, humorless smile. You really think anyone still believes in truth? The network. The safe house in Berlin was hidden above an abandoned printing factory. 4 stories of broken windows and dust, humming faintly with the ghosts of old machines. Waiting for them inside was Marina Duval, a cybersecurity specialist Elena had worked with in Brussels 2 years earlier. Sharp eyes, sharp words, and a sharper instinct for survival. She glanced at Rourke, then back at Elena. You look like you've seen a ghost. Close enough, Elena said, handing her the watch. Marina scanned the mechanism with her portable quantum lens. Within seconds, holographic threads unfolded in midair, layers of encrypted data hidden in the gears themselves. The strings of numbers began to resolve into names, dozens of them, bank CEOs, political donors, tech billionaires, health ministers. Rourke whistled low. You've got to be kidding. No joke, Marina said. It's an organization. They called themselves the Ashes Network, a consortium designed to reset global order after each collapse. Every major economic shock for the past 100 years, they orchestrated it. Elena stepped closer. Every collapse, 1,920, 1,954, 1,982, 2008. Marina nodded grimly. And 2020. The air seemed to thicken with the weight of it. The truth behind 2020. They moved to the lower level, where the glow of monitors painted the walls in cold light. On one screen archived pandemic data. On another, financial market graphs spiking and collapsing in perfect synchrony. Rourke's jaw tightened. So it wasn't just incompetence. No, Marina said. It was engineering. The Ashes Network used the crisis to consolidate digital currencies, funnel bailout funds, buy control of health patents, billions in profit, while the world burned. Elena stared at the timeline. Each global tragedy wasn't random. It was a pattern. She whispered, almost to herself. They turned suffering into strategy. The betrayal. By midnight, they'd uploaded fragments of the decrypted files to an off-grid server. Elena drafted a message to an investigative journalist. She trusted David Lasker, a man who once risked his life to expose corruption at the European Central Bank. But before she could send it, Rourke's comms device beeped. An encrypted call. He frowned. It's Kovacs. Dr. Kovacs's voice crackled through static. You must leave Berlin now. The network knows you're there. They traced the signal from Zurich. How? Elena asked sharply. Someone in your circle has betrayed you. The line went dead. Rourke's eyes met hers. Marina? But the room was already empty. Her laptop still hummed, but the files were gone. The Ashes archive had been copied. Elena's stomach dropped. No. Then the explosion hit. The blast tore through the factory's lower floor, a wave of fire and shrapnel that sent Elena and Rourke crashing into concrete. The sound was deafening. Smoke filled the corridor. Rourke! She coughed, dragging him toward the stairwell. He was bleeding from his shoulder, but alive. Through the flames, she saw Marina on the far side, face pale, eyes hollow. She wasn't running. She was watching. And then she vanished into the smoke. The burning files. They escaped through the side alley, coughing and half-blind from smoke. Sirens echoed in the distance. The factory's windows glowed orange. flames devouring everything, including their data. Elena leaned against the wall, trembling. She's sold us out. She was probably working for them the whole time, Rourke muttered, clutching his wound. No, Elena said softly. She hesitated. She wanted us alive. That means the network still needs something. Rourke looked at her. The watch? No, the truth. The message that survived. Hours later, in a safe motel outside Hamburg, Elena tried to salvage what fragments of data she'd backed up. One file survived, a heavily corrupted document labeled Operation Resurgence. She ran a partial decryption. Out came a voice file, Marina's. If you're hearing this, I'm sorry. I didn't betray you willingly. They have my brother. The Ashes network isn't history, it's happening again. Phase 2 launches in 3 days. The target is not financial, it's digital. They're going to collapse the world's data infrastructure and rebuild control from zero. Then silence. Elena sank into the chair, staring at the screen. They're going to erase reality itself. Rourke lit a cigarette with shaking hands. We stop them, or the world resets for good. The realization, dawn crept through the blinds, pale, weak, indifferent. Elena gazed at the cracked pocket watch, the second hand twitching erratically. It was alive again, but off rhythm like a heartbeat out of sync with the world. We thought we were chasing ghosts, she murmured. But ghosts don't crash markets or start pandemics. They're alive. They're here. Rourke nodded grimly. The enemy isn't history. She turned toward him, eyes hardening. It's the present. Chapter 7. Operation Phoenix. Paris never truly sleeps. It only changes disguise. At night, the Seine turns black and mirror smooth, reflecting light like the face of a coin. Elena Marquez and Michael Rourke crossed Pont de Ber Hakim just after midnight, their coats soaked from a sudden downpour. The Eiffel Tower loomed ahead, an iron sentinel, indifferent to what hunted them. Rourke's shoulder still bled from the Berlin explosion, the bandage already dark. You're slowing down, Elena said quietly. I'm keeping pace, he replied, grimacing. But next time, you can outrun the bullets. They slipped into the metro, descending into a tunnel that smelled of metal and rain. The crowds were gone. Only the hum of distant trains and a drunk busker's echo remained. The dead drop. Inside a forgotten service corridor, they found a steel locker marked PH9. Marina's final message had directed them there. Elena keyed in the code she'd extracted from the corrupted file. The lock clicked open. Inside, a single data shard, transparent and humming faintly blue. Label: Operation Phoenix. Auth: Archangel. Rourke's jaw tightened. If that's what I think it is, then it's the blueprint for the next collapse. Elena finished. She slipped it into her encrypted reader. The file unfolded like a digital labyrinth. Schematics, AI sequences, and virus strings designed to infiltrate global servers. At the center of the code pulsed a phrase: reset the grid, burn the ledger. The ambush. The corridor lights flickered. Footsteps. Rourke raised his pistol. Too late. A flash grenade burst through the doorway, white light, deafening bang. Elena fell to the floor, ears ringing. Shadows flooded in. 3 men in tactical gear, visors black, weapons silenced. Rourke fired twice. One fell, another lunged. They crashed into the lockers, metal shrieking. Run, he shouted. Elena scrambled up the stairwell, clutching the shard. Gunfire echoed, ricocheting off tiles. She burst onto the street, Rue de Grenelle, near the ministry quarter, only to find the city eerily empty. Behind her, Rourke staggered out, blood blooming across his coat. "You're hit." Not the first time. They ran. The pursuit. Sirens howled somewhere far off. The rain turned the streets into rivers of reflected neon. They darted through back alleys, past shuttered cafes, and graffiti that glowed under wet light. From the rooftops, red laser dots swept the walls. The assassins were using drones, now silent, unmarked, efficient. Rourke dropped to one knee, aimed upward, and took one down with a single shot. The explosion lit the night in orange and white. "You go," he said, breath ragged. "I'll hold them." "No," Elena snapped. "You die here, I die too." He gave a faint smile. "Then you'd better make it worth dying for." They ducked into the catacombs entrance, the old ossuary tunnels beneath the city. The iron gate slammed shut behind them, echoing through bone-lined corridors. The catacombs. The air was cold and ancient. Skulls stared from the walls as they descended deeper, their lamps flickering in the damp air. "Fitting place for a rebirth," Rourke murmured. "Phoenix rises from ashes," Elena said. "They mean to rise from ours." At a small chamber lit by a single bulb, Elena connected the shard to her tablet. The data bloomed again. Schematics of central banks, satellite grids, biometric IDs. Operation Phoenix wasn't a metaphor. It was a full-scale digital collapse protocol, a system designed to wipe all electronic records worldwide and replace them with a new, unified ledger controlled by the network. Every bank, every ID, every memory of money. "They're not destroying the world," she whispered. "They're rebooting it." The wound. Rourke leaned heavily against the wall, face pale. Blood seeped through his shirt. "I can't feel my arm," he muttered. "Stay awake," Elena said, tearing her scarf to tighten the bandage. "You're better at giving orders than taking them." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "If I go down here, finish it. Promise me." "Don't you dare." Their lamps flickered again. Footsteps echoed. The assassins had followed them underground. The final stand. They ran until the tunnel split into two. Rourke shoved her toward the left passage. "Go. Find a terminal. Get Phoenix out." She hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll slow them down." The gunfire started before she could protest. Rourke disappeared into the smoke and shadow. Muzzle flashes lighting the skulls like strobe ghosts. Elena ran until she found an abandoned telecom room, a relic from the Cold War. She plugged the shard into the ancient console and began the upload to an off-grid satellite. Progress: 12%, 28%, 54%. Outside, screams echoed. Boots, gunfire, silence. "Rourke," she whispered into the radio. No answer. 72%, 89%, 100%. The shard melted in a spark of blue light, the failsafe self-destruct. The data was safe, but she wasn't. A hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun gun ready, only to face Marina, alive. "You?" Elena hissed. "They sent me to finish it," Marina said softly. "But I couldn't." "You uploaded it?" "Yes." "Then they'll kill us both." The fire above. Explosions rocked the tunnels. Dust fell like gray snow. Elena dragged Marina toward the exit shaft. The ladder led up into a narrow street near Montparnasse. They emerged into chaos, black smoke billowing from rooftops, sirens wailing across Paris. One of the network's data hubs was burning. Rourke stumbled from the smoke behind them, half-conscious, bloodied but alive. "Told you," he muttered. "Hard to kill." Elena caught him as he collapsed. She looked up at the orange sky, fire reflected in her eyes. "Phoenix has started. The system's burning." Marina nodded grimly. "And when the ashes settle, they'll rebuild stronger." Elena held Rourke's hand. "Then we stop the rebirth." Chapter 8. The Vatican Account. Rome. The city glowed like an ember dying under the weight of history. By dawn, the digital blackout had reached Europe. Screens were blank, ATMs lifeless, airport boards flickering like dying fireflies. The world was pausing just long enough for someone to rewrite its code. Elena Marquez arrived through the mist at St. Peter's Square, coat dusted with ash and exhaustion. Rourke was recovering under false ID at an underground clinic outside Milan. Marina had vanished again, chasing her own ghosts. Elena came alone. The Vatican loomed ahead, silent, immaculate, watching the world burn from behind its gilded walls. The summons. She'd been summoned through an encrypted Vatican server under the codename Exodus 3. Inside, the corridors were still lit by candlelight. The guards in ceremonial armor didn't flinch as she passed, though she knew they were armed with far more than spears. A priest led her down into the Archivio Segreto, where centuries of forbidden records slept behind lead doors. "His Eminence will see you now," the priest murmured. The cardinal. The room smelled of parchment and incense. At a long oak table sat Cardinal Vittorio Lucenti, a man in his late 70s with eyes as sharp as obsidian and a scar along his temple, a relic from some other war, some other life. "Miss Marquez," he said in a voice both warm and cold, "you seek answers that do not wish to be found." "Then I've come to the right place," she replied. He smiled faintly. "Do you believe in sin? I've seen it, quantified it, stored it in offshore accounts. Then you understand confession, the ledger of heaven." Lucenti rose and walked to a safe embedded in the wall. From within, he withdrew a folder sealed with wax and the insignia of Istituto per le Opere di Religione, the Vatican Bank. He laid it before her. Inside were ledgers, coded transfers, and a list of offshore entities tied to Banco Ambrosiano, the same bank whose collapse in 1982 had killed Roberto Calvi, God's banker. Elena flipped through the documents, her breath catching. The trail linked directly to the Ashes network, rebranded over decades through foundations, shell companies, and ecclesiastical trusts. The Vatican hadn't just observed the laundering, it had sanctified it. "So it's true," she whispered. "You kept the network alive." "Alive?" Lucenti's eyes gleamed. "My dear, we birthed it." He poured himself a small glass of red wine, the liquid catching the light like blood. "Even the church launders its sins in gold," he said softly. The words hung between them, heavy as confession. "The bargain." Elena steadied her voice. "The money from Ambrosiano, where did it go?" "Into silence," Lucenti said. "Into wars and charities, governments and ghosts. We built a system that made kings kneel and presidents pray. But now your Phoenix seeks to erase even that hierarchy. Then help me stop it." End quote. "And replace it with what?" "A new god made of code." He stepped closer, candlelight tracing the lines of his face. "You came here seeking truth, Miss Marquez. Truth is not holy, it's currency. We spend it until it loses value." The confession. Elena activated her recorder, placing it on the table. "I'm not leaving without a confession." Lucenti chuckled. "And if I confess, will you forgive me?" "No," she said, "but the world might." He leaned forward, whispering, "We were promised salvation through control. Money was never the sin, forgetting who owned it was." Then his eyes changed a flicker of resignation, almost peace. He slid a thin data card across the table. "This is what you came for. The Vatican account. Every ledger from 1929 to 2025. But take care. Child redemption is a costly illusion." The gunshot. Before Elena could respond, the door burst open. A shot rang out loud, deafening against the marble. Lucenti froze, then collapsed, the wine glass shattering beside him. Blood mingled with the spilled Merlot, dark and glistening. A young priest, no older than 30, stood in the doorway, trembling, gun in hand. "Forgive me, Father," he whispered. "They said you would betray the faith." Elena ducked behind the table as another shot tore through the air. The candles went out. In the darkness, she lunged forward, slamming the priest's arm against the wall. The gun fell. She kicked it away and ran. The escape. The corridors twisted like veins. Bells tolled above an ancient rhythm that drowned her footsteps. She could hear the Vatican guard shouting in Italian, the echo of boots growing nearer. She clutched the data card to her chest and burst into the open courtyard, where the first light of morning broke through the clouds. The pigeons scattered. The bells stopped. Rome exhaled. The call. Outside the Vatican gates, she slipped into a waiting taxi. Her hands shook as she dialed the secure line. Rourke answered, his voice hoarse but alive. "You've got it?" "The Vatican account," she breathed. "It's all here. A century of blood money. Then we can expose them." "No, Michael. It's not just them. It's everyone. The network isn't hiding behind faith or finance anymore. It's rewriting both." Silence crackled. Then Rourke said quietly, "Then we burn a god." Elena looked back one last time, the dome of Street Peters gleaming under the rising sun, serene, untouchable. She closed her eyes. "Then let's start the fire." Chapter 9. Fire in Canary Wharf. The rain fell sideways, slicing through the London skyline like razors of light. By nightfall, the city's heart, Canary Wharf, was pulsing with blue neon and thunder. Elena Marquez stepped out of the cab, her coat soaked, her nerves shot. On the opposite side of the street, Michael Rourke leaned against a pillar, bandaged and pale but alive, the ghost of a soldier refusing to rest. They hadn't seen each other since Rome. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "Neither should you," she replied, handing him a flash drive. "The Vatican data. Every transaction. Every name. If we upload this, the network falls." End quote. "Then let's make it fall loud enough for the world to hear." The tower. They entered Vos Bank, London, the European headquarters of the Ashes Network. 42 floors of mirrored glass, steel, and deceit. At night, the building reflected the city like a broken truth. Elena's access card, forged by Rourke's contacts, opened the side entrance. Inside, the marble lobby was empty except for the hum of servers far above and the faint scent of ozone. "Security's gone silent," Rourke muttered. "That's never good." They took the lift, 41 floors up to the executive archive. On the wall, a digital plaque read, "Vos Bank International, founded 1921, rebuilding the future." The doors opened to darkness. The ambush, a whisper of motion, then the muzzle flash. The first bullet shattered the glass beside her. Rourke pulled Elena to the floor as gunfire erupted, echoing through the hall like thunder in a tunnel. 3 men in black tactical gear moved through the shadows. Ash's operatives, armed and trained. "They knew we were coming," Elena gasped. "They always know," Rourke snarled, firing back. Sparks flew from steel pillars. One attacker fell. Another circled wide. Elena crawled toward a terminal, bullets slicing the air inches from her face. She jammed in the Vatican drive, uploading 4%, 12%. Come on, come on. The lights flickered red. A deep hum shook the floor. The building had sealed itself. The inferno. From the top floor, a mechanical voice echoed. "Containment breach detected. Protocol Ashes 9 initiated." Rourke's eyes widened. "They're burning it." "What?" "The whole archive, digital and physical. They'd rather incinerate the truth than lose it." Elena glanced at the upload 47% as a roar filled the air. A column of flame burst from the central shaft, igniting the server stacks, swallowing glass and steel in a spiral of fire. "Michael, the core's collapsing. Move." They ran, the corridor splitting behind them as panels melted and alarms screamed. The heat was unbearable. The world became smoke and orange fury. Elena's lungs clawed for air as she grabbed the drive and dove through a shattered door. Rourke covered her, coughing blood. "Go. Not without you. I'll hold them." But before he could finish, an explosion tore through the floor. He vanished into flame. The fall. Elena screamed his name, but there was only fire. She stumbled through smoke, her vision fading, until she saw a maintenance shaft open like a wound in the wall. She crawled inside, clutching the half-uploaded drive. The elevator cables snapped above her. A flash of light, a crash, then nothing. The river. When she opened her eyes, she was floating cold, weightless. The Thames had carried her body downstream, away from the burning skyline. In the distance, Canary Wharf glowed red, a funeral pyre reflected in the black water. Her hands trembled. The drive was gone. Everything she'd fought for erased in smoke. But as she dragged herself onto the embankment, coughing up river water, she saw something glinting beside her coat, a charred fragment of the flash drive, its metal casing etched with a single word burned into it by the heat. Phoenix. Elena stared at it, realization dawning. "They didn't destroy it," she whispered. "They activated it." The broadcast. Sirens wailed in the distance. On every surviving screen in London, a logo flickered to life, a circle of ash and flame. A digitized voice spoke. The old system must burn for the new one to rise. Operation Phoenix has begun. The aftermath. Elena sank to her knees, smoke curling in the rain around her. The world had just lost its shadow and gained a fire. Somewhere behind the smoke, she thought she saw movement, a figure limping through the chaos, silhouetted against the burning tower. It looked like Rourke, but before she could call out, the flames consumed him again, and the tower collapsed, a pillar of sparks against the black sky. Elena turned away. Tears cut paths through the soot on her face. "If the world wants to burn," she said quietly, "then I'll light the match myself." Chapter 10. Return to Wall Street. The first thing Elena noticed was the silence. New York, usually loud enough to drown out conscience, had gone unnaturally still. Rain gathered on the Federal Reserve stone steps like black glass, reflecting the glow of a half-dead skyline. She hadn't been here in years, not since everything began. Now, she was back, a ghost walking through the graveyard of capitalism. The return. The Federal Reserve loomed like a fortress of marble and gilt. Security was light. The world's attention was still on London, where the fires of Canary Wharf had not yet stopped burning. Elena moved with purpose, carrying a forged clearance badge and a single bag inside, a gun she swore she wouldn't use again, and a key left behind by Rourke. The name etched on it, Voss, 1920. If the truth burns, Rourke had once told her, then let it burn under their own roof. She reached the inner vault corridor, guided by the blueprints Dr. Kovacs had decrypted before Zurich fell. The layout was wrong deeper than any official diagram. She felt it before she saw it. A chill in the air, a shift in the hum of machines, as though the building itself was hiding its breath. The descent. The elevator was locked, so she forced it open and climbed down the maintenance shaft. The light grew colder with every rung, until the steel walls were replaced by something older stone. She dropped into a tunnel, her flashlight flickering against brickwork darkened by a century of dust. At the end of the passage stood a door, unlike any vault she'd ever seen. No keypad, no lock, just a brass plate engraved with a date, the 16th of September, 1920. Her pulse quickened. That was the day of the Wall Street bombing. She touched the plate, and the metal shifted under her fingers, warm, alive. A faint click echoed through the tunnel. The door opened. The vault. Inside was silence, thick, absolute. The air smelled of oil and paper, like a library buried under time. Rows of ledgers stretched into the dark, each bound in cracked leather, each tagged with the same insignia. Voss Bank Consolidated, 1919, 1920. Elena's flashlight beam trembled over the nearest book. She opened it carefully. Numbers, names, transfers. But as she turned the pages, the handwriting changed, elegant, then frantic, then burned. Whole pages were charred black. Beneath the ash, faint letters shimmered. She brushed the surface with her gloves, and the numbers rearranged themselves, forming modern account codes. No way. The vault wasn't a relic. It was alive, connected. Every page linked to an active digital mirror somewhere in the present. Every debt, every lie, from 1920 had simply moved forward, hidden in new systems. A century of fraud still breathing beneath Wall Street's skin. The revelation. She placed her recorder on the table. Journal entry, October 27th, 2025. Elena Marquez, Federal Reserve Sub-Vault, confirming existence of Voss Bank's original ledgers, cross-referencing data flow active as of this hour. History didn't end in 1920. It was rebranded. End quote. She flipped open a smaller book, stamped Confidential, Ashes Consortium. Inside, a note written by hand. We bury the truth beneath the rubble. The world will rise on our ashes. Elias Voss, 1920. Her breath caught. That name, Elias Voss, founder of Voss Bank, progenitor of the entire network. It was all here. She snapped photos, backed up what she could to a hidden drive, and reached for her communicator. Rourke, it's real. Everything. The network didn't start after the bomb. The bomb was their reset. The ashes were their foundation. Only static answered. Rourke, silence. Then, faintly a voice. Elena, you shouldn't be there. The betrayal. She froze. That voice wasn't Rourke's. It was Elena Kovacs, the professor's daughter, her contact from Zurich, the one who'd smuggled them the bank map. Lena, how did you think the consortium didn't know? You've been feeding them every coordinate you found. That's impossible. I encrypted. They built your encryption. You were their messenger from the start. The sound of footsteps echoed through the vault, heavy, deliberate. Figures in suits appeared behind the shelves, flashlights cutting through dust. Vosbank security, armed and silent. Lena's voice came again, colder now. You wanted to uncover ghosts, Elena. But ghosts belong to the ones who buried them. The collapse. The first shot shattered a ledger. Ink and dust flew like black snow. Elena dove behind a shelf, firing back blindly. Sparks lit the dark. The ledgers caught fire, one by one, pages burning with numbers that refused to die. Smoke thickened, alarms screamed, and the walls began to tremble. Elena grabbed the original 1,920 ledger and bolted down the corridor. The vault door was closing, a slow mechanical grind. She threw herself through, just as it sealed shut behind her. Above, the building groaned. A deep, metallic echo rolled through the tunnel. Someone was collapsing the lower levels, burying the evidence all over again. The escape. She ran until the air turned breathable. When she reached the street, dawn was breaking, a thin gray light over Wall Street. Calm and deceitful. Behind her, the Federal Reserve stood as it always had, proud, unshaken, untouched. But beneath it, the truth was burning. She clutched the half-burned ledger to her chest, its title barely legible. Ledger 001, Ash's account. Her voice was hoarse, trembling. It's not over. It never was. She turned north, toward the skyline where the first light touched the water, and somewhere in that reflection, she thought she saw Rourke's silhouette again, waiting. Chapter 11. The Ashes Code. The sky over Manhattan was the color of ash, pale, exhausted, and endless. Elena hadn't slept in 48 hours. The city's noise felt distant, as though she were hearing it from beneath glass. The ledger in her bag throbbed like a heartbeat. Every page felt alive, whispering secrets too old and too heavy to belong to any one person. She was sitting in a safe house, a tiny apartment, above a disused print shop in the Lower East Side. The walls were lined with maps, photographs, and red thread that crossed the Atlantic like veins. On the table, the original 1,920 ledger lay open beside her laptop. The ink was fading, but the words refused to die. The code within. She decrypted hundreds of ciphers before, but never one written in grief. The numbers weren't just bank accounts. They were coordinates, timestamps, and dates of transactions hidden inside the global gold trade. Each line pointed to a shell company, a foundation, or an offshore account, and each one led back to a single origin. Vosbank Holdings, the same dynasty that had financed both the rebuilding of Wall Street and the modern digital currency infrastructure. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became. The 1,920 bombing wasn't an act of terror. It was a cover-up, a financial self-immolation. They hadn't been attacked. They'd blown themselves up to erase their crimes. The victims on Wall Street that day, bankers, brokers, secretaries, were sacrifices, collateral for a new era of power. The explosion had wiped the physical ledgers clean, and from that ash rose a purified economy, one untraceable and untouchable. But one copy of the ledgers had survived, sealed beneath the Federal Reserve. And now Elena was holding it. The message from Rourke. Her encrypted line buzzed. A voice broke through. Rough but familiar. Elena, it's me. Rourke, you found it, didn't you? She froze. You're alive. Where are you? Doesn't matter. Listen carefully. You're not just chasing history anymore. You're standing in its crosshairs. The signal cracked, but his tone was urgent, raw. The Voss family runs everything: central banks, digital currency platforms, even governments. They built the illusion of freedom. Phoenix wasn't about rebuilding. It was about resetting. Resetting what? Us. A pause. They know you have the ledger. They'll burn the world before letting you show it. Static, then silence. The archive. Elena opened her laptop again. The files she'd copied from Zurich, the ones Kovacs had risked his life for, began to merge with the ledger data. As the algorithms cross-referenced the dates, a pattern emerged, a wave that pulsed across a century of finance. 1920, 1971, 2008, 2020. Every crisis in modern history was orchestrated by the same invisible hand, the Ashes Network, born from the ruins of Voss Bank. Each collapse wasn't chaos. It was cleansing. Burn the debt, reset the records, rise anew. The screen glowed with one final message, embedded deep in the file metadata, written in the same hand as the 1920 ledger. We are not the victims of time. We are its architects. Elias Voss. Her stomach turned. This wasn't just corruption. It was design, a century-long manipulation of reality itself. The visit. A knock shattered the silence. 3 taps. Slow, deliberate. Elena reached for her gun. The door opened before she could move. Standing in the threshold was Cardinal Moretti, the man she'd met in the Vatican. He was older now, or perhaps simply tired. His eyes carried centuries of guilt. "You shouldn't have followed the trail, child," he said softly. "The ledger you hold was meant to stay buried. Then you know what it means." "I do. It's the book of fire, the code that binds the old world to the new." He stepped closer, rain dripping from his cassock. "The church saw it once before. We thought it divine punishment, gold turned to ash, but it was man's design. The Voss dynasty bought absolution with the blood of others. Then help me expose them and end what remains of order," he whispered. "Even the church launders its sins in gold, Miss Marquez. What makes you think the world will survive the truth?" Revelation. Elena's hands trembled. The moral weight of it crushed her chest. She thought of the faces, the banker who'd killed himself in Zurich, Rourke bleeding in the Paris night, the innocent people lost in the name of resetting the system. She couldn't stop now. She plugged the ledger drive into a secure terminal and began transmitting the data to every major network, journalist, and watchdog she could find. If the world was built on lies, then it was time to make it choke on the truth. Her screen flickered, then froze. A symbol appeared, the same phoenix insignia she'd seen in Zurich. The data was being traced. Someone was inside her system. No, not now. Make it new there. The lights dimmed. The walls vibrated. From outside came the echo of approaching helicopters. She grabbed the ledger, the drive, and the recorder, the final clue. As she turned to flee, her eyes caught one last page, a folded parchment hidden inside the back cover of the ledger. It wasn't a financial record. It was a family tree. At the top, Elias Voss, 1,884. 1,920. Below it, generations of successors, bankers, politicians, digital architects, and at the bottom, her blood froze. Michael Rourke Voss. Her mind went blank. No, that can't be. The realization hit like a gunshot. Rourke, the man who had saved her, bled for her, betrayed his own, was a direct descendant of the family that started it all. He'd known from the start. Every rescue, every lead, every warning part, guilt, part protection. And now he was gone. The fire spreads. Elena ran for the rooftop, the city howling below. Searchlights carved through the mist, voices shouting her name. The helicopter lights found her white, blinding, merciless. She held the ledger up to the light, defiant. You can't bury it twice. Then she tossed it into the storm, into the rising wind. Pages scattered like burning wings, carrying the truth into the world. The sky flared with lightning. Chapter 12. The Fall of Ashes. The skyline of New York burned with the first pale light of dawn. Elena Marquez stood atop the steps of Voss Bank headquarters, the building looming like a cathedral of steel and glass, centuries of secrets stacked in mirrored towers. The streets below were unnaturally still. Police barricades, military units, and media crews had been drawn by a single encrypted broadcast, the leaked Ashes code. Inside, the bank's boardroom was empty, a vacuum of power waiting for her to fill it with truth. The confrontation. She entered the main floor. Surveillance cameras followed her. Screens across the city displayed her image in real time. From the shadows emerged Michael Rourke Voss, no longer the protector, no longer the guide, only the heir of a dynasty built on blood, ash, and gold. Elena, he said, voice calm but heavy. You've gone too far. I've gone exactly as far as the world demands. He stepped closer. You don't understand. You can't expose this without destroying everything. Economies, lives, the entire system we built. Exactly, she whispered. It's time to end it. The room filled with tension, centuries of deception trapped in one face-off. Rourke raised a hand. I saved you. I guided you. But you don't see the bigger picture. I am the bigger picture. Elena's eyes burned. No, you're just a man hiding behind your family name. And that ends today. The exposure. She activated the secure terminal. Files from Zurich, Rome, New York, every ledger, every bank transfer, every manipulated market event streamed live onto every major global network. Across screens worldwide, the Ashes network was laid bare. The 1920 Wall Street bombing was a cover-up. Every financial crisis, every pandemic profit, every offshore account traced back to the Voss dynasty. Names, dates, sums, and crimes unmasked. The world held its breath. Markets froze. Stock tickers stalled. Banks went silent. Traders, bankers, presidents, and journalists alike stared at screens, realizing the empire of lies they'd been trusting for decades was gone. The last stand. Rourke Voss drew a weapon, a reflex born from generations of survival. Stop this, he hissed. It's already too late. Gunfire echoed. Elena ducked behind the terminal, sending one final burst of code to ensure the leak couldn't be reversed. Glass shattered. Security systems failed. Smoke filled the air. Rourke raised his hands, not in surrender, but acknowledgement. You'll regret this, he said. No, Elena replied, voice steady. History will remember this, not you. He vanished into the chaos as the building's security systems overloaded, alarms screaming into the dawn. The collapse. The Ashes Network's empire began to crumble instantly. Banks froze. Transactions halted. Markets imploded as trust dissolved. But Elena did not watch with triumph. She watched with a heavy heart, knowing that every revelation came at a cost. Innocent lives shaken, economies toppled, futures uncertain. She walked to the roof, the morning wind tangling her hair, and looked out over Manhattan. From the top of the world, the city looked both fragile and beautiful, a testament to human resilience and folly. Reflection. The ledger, the drives, the code, all were scattered now, public, irrevocable. Elena exhaled, feeling the weight lift slightly from her shoulders. The truth, once buried in ash, burns brighter than any flame, she murmured. She closed her eyes. The wind carried the faint echo of Rourke's warning, the voices of the betrayed, the silent gratitude of those who would never know. And in that quiet, she realized the world could rebuild, wiser, stronger, perhaps finally free of the shadows that had haunted it for a century. Epilogue. A new dawn. Across the globe, people watched as investigations, prosecutions, and reckonings began. Elena disappeared from the spotlight, leaving behind the ashes and the knowledge that some truths were too powerful to be contained. The skyscrapers of Wall Street reflected the rising sun. A century of deceit had ended. A century of vigilance had begun. The ashes of Wall Street had burned, but from the ashes, a new world would rise. End of chapter 12. And the novel. The Ashes of Wall Street complete. A 12-chapter, cinematic, emotionally charged thriller spanning New York, London, Paris, Zurich, and the Vatican, exposing a century-long conspiracy of wealth, power, and deception.